This is Jeff Gomez, Marketing Director at UpNest. Today, I'll be talking with Craig Ackerman, a real estate agent in the San Francisco Bay Area. Craig, can you tell me a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure, Jeff. My real focus has been on process improvement, building you know a process that we're constantly striving to refine and improve, so that our quality is very consistent and our standards are very high. And that generally has to do and focuses around people selling their homes. So
Mm-hmm.
getting the property in the very best possible condition, doing the upfront assessment, and then bringing in the right vendors and suppliers to help the seller make the strongest buyer impression when buyers tour the property.
Gotcha. And how do you do that? What is the strategy?
It's to be honest. And to be honest, you got to be knowledgeable. I can't taint what I tell people because they don't want to hear it. I can't dilute the 500 successful homes that I've sold and everything I've learned because somebody doesn't want to hear the truth. I think the sellers deserve the truth. And so a lot of it just focuses around me visiting the property, and it's kind of like a physical exam of the patient. I
Mm-hmm.
bring two things with me. I don't bring any sales material. I don't bring any brochures, no paper. I bring a flashlight and I bring a camera. And I basically assess the foundation, the fixtures, the faucets, the surfaces, the countertops, the paint, the floor plan, determine whether the foundation is poured in place or something else. If there's bolting, are we talking about a copper, excuse me, a copper plumbing system? What type of furnace? What type of hot water delivery system? And just really gaining as much information about the property as I can so that we can go to work and making it look and project as best as it possibly can to get the seller as much money for the property when it goes on the market.
Yeah, that makes sense. And this is pretty different from how most other real estate agents approach it, right?
I don't really know how other agents do what they do. Frankly, as I like to say, it's none of my business.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've never worked in a big corporate firm. I've always had my own. I've always been staunchly, fiercely independent. And I just rest very strongly on the background, the experience I have living 10 years in Asia in the flooring business, growing up renovating homes with my dad, and then since then doing the same on my own.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So you basically do like a full inspection of the house to correctly price it before anything else?
Well, I certainly wouldn't call it an inspection. I would call it a very detailed assessment where I take about 100 pictures of each and every home that I visit. And that way, my stager, painter, and team can look at the photo, can look at on the screen. We sit shoulder to shoulder. Our design team sits shoulder to shoulder, looking at the screens, looking at the sight lines, and determining what are the best upgrades to the property. And when I say upgrades, I'm talking about, basically resurfacing upgrades, not renovation.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at what can we do to make this home memorable in the eyes of a buyer? How can we flow the traffic? What can we do to make whether it's the period detail of the home or the building materials, the floors that were chosen, what can we do to make those look and make those stand out so that it's a really memorable, interesting, enjoyable experience for a buyer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a great thing to focus on. Um, what are some of the most common upgrades and resurfacings that you do and that you suggest after touring through a house?
Uh, well, typically, as you know, the color palette has first of all moved away from the gold, the taupe, the tans, the browns, all of those hues, which are very warm, and things have moved towards a cooler palette. So ice blues, silver, 20 shades, there's 100 shades of gray, I suppose. And we we try to focus on things like the floors, which typically in San Francisco, most floors are red oak, but red oak doesn't mean anything to people. What they see is they see a yellowing floor. They see an orange, taupe, yellow, brown floor, and we try to assess if it makes sense to resurface the floors so that we come away with a gray looking floor. Of course, we can't change that they're narrow plank floors, maybe 2.5, 3 inches wide. If we were building new construction today, we'd probably go with a wide plank floor, 10 inches wide. But we can change the color and the overall feeling. So it's the usual. It's the floor colors. It's the wall colors. It's the silhouettes. So we're moving away from anything ornate, trying to make things as clean and as simple as possible. People like to live elegantly in a comfortable way. They don't like to live in a stuffy way.
Right. Yeah.
And the same thing with all the hardware, the pulls, the pendant lights, the hardware on the handles, the doors. Nobody wants rounded handles. Everyone wants louvers, but the strike plates, the mechanicals, and the hinges, everything needs to be changed out pretty much to brushed nickel or a different scheme as opposed to the usual gold, which is really just evokes a sense of grandma's house.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is kind of a big question, but why do you think that housing styles change so much over the decades? Like, why isn't a house that was built 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago still in style?
Why is it not still in style?
Yeah.
I think for us in the Bay Area, San Francisco, we have so much new construction.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine if I take a person, a buyer, to go visit some properties, say in Pacific Heights, which is a very nice section of town. It's a wonderful district. It's an older district. Typically, those homes are a little bit more outdated. There's a lot of Edwardian and Victorian style homes, so hence there's a lot of potential functional obsolescence. They tend to be older, but that same buyer I take because they've got 2 more homes they want to see, whether it's in South Beach or south of Market or the Mission District. Those homes, there's so much new construction. So they're looking at radiant heated floors, open kitchens. It used to be a big deal when you had a bar counter in the kitchen and the sink was facing the wall. Now, if your sink isn't in an island and so that you can face your guests with a bar counter with a 13, 11-inch overhang for lots of leg room, you're kind of out of date. So I think the thing that's changed the most in the last 30 years in our market, without a doubt, is all the new construction, floor to ceiling glass, just beautiful surfaces, task lighting, under cabinet lighting. All of this has played a big role and has forced people selling their home to pay more attention to the lifestyle that it evokes. Oftentimes, Jeff, the pictures of the home on the internet look better than the homes do in person.
Sure.
So yay to the photographer, but boo that you're creating expectations that you can't exceed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the advent, all of the new construction that's gone on in the city particularly in the last 15 years, has really caused a shift. That and name a single person in your life that hasn't been overstuffed with 10, 15 home remodeling shows. Everybody's an expert, so everybody's been exposed to that.
Do you ever get sellers who you pitch these upgrades and updates to them and they say, oh, the home has this nostalgic value, we don't want to change anything?
Sure.
Get those guys, and how do you convince them?
Well, we don't. We just give them options. It's a great question because it's not our way or the highway. We consider part of our quest, part of our duty is to explain. And again, with 100 pictures of the home and my team having looked at everything, we can make not only we can give them great advice on what we would do with different color palettes and options, but we have to give it to them a la carte. They have to be able to select from the menu of the things that they're willing and interested in doing and the things that they just absolutely don't want to do. And that kind of breaks down interestingly. I find it interesting. Some people will say, well, I don't want to spend more than $20,000 on resurfacing the home in the next 5 days to get it ready for sale. We'll use that as a do not exceed budget. Other people will say, do whatever you like, but just don't touch my kitchen. So everybody's different. And frankly, it all starts with what's important to you. Now, some sellers will look at me and say, are you kidding me? And I say, no. And they'll say, you can see they're getting angry. They're irritated. I want the highest price. Great. Are you willing to let me do what we do and step out of the way? Or would you like to be involved? And people, it's A to Z. People are all over the map. All over the map.
Yeah, no, that's super tricky. It's hard to gain someone trust like that, especially when you're doing things to the house they've lived in for however long it's been. Let's say you give them an a la carte menu. What are the items on the menu that you think have the highest return on investment, that are relatively cheap to do, but really yield a big increase in home value? Is it the color palette?
Great question. So depending upon the home, the color palette is always very important. And I don't believe in the whitewash effect. When recently the idea of concierge services came out, I have been doing this since about 2005. And so we've been resurfacing homes for a long time. I've done over 200 successful resurfacings that's led to over $11 million in additional seller profitability as the direct result of the demand that these resurfaced homes command. So it's generally also lighting. So color palette, it's lighting. Everything should be LED to the extent possible. And retail home sales follow retail shopping trends. Today, when you walk into a better retail store, they're pumping the place with oxygen. They're pumping it with lots of light, task lighting, and everything is centered on the consumer. So when people come into a home, maybe for a Sunday open house, remember it's bright sunshine. They come into a dark space, their eyes have to adjust. That's not a good start. But the other thing that needs to be done is we want all the inspections conducted, all the elective and mandatory inspections conducted, so that we have a comprehensive disclosure package. We set a bid date to drive competition and to aggregate demand to one point in time. And if they have a client or a neighbor or a friend or a family member that says, gee, I'd like to buy the house, our advice is always the same. Smile, thank them for their interest, and encourage them to participate on the bid date, because the estate, my family, my wife, my husband is holding me to this process.
Right.
If I told you the number of times that I had 12, 15, 25 offers on a house, Jeff, it's because the place looks great. The tour experience was very memorable. All the inspections are done, which breeds contingent free offers. And then people get a little irrational exuberance in their system when the bid date comes. I can tell you there's many times where there's 100, 200,000, even a $400,000 delta between the highest bidder and the next person down.
Wow, that's incredible. That's huge, and that's due to all those factors that you were talking about.
I always tell people my job is not to sell your house. The biggest lie in real estate is when a listing agent says to the seller, I have just the right person for your home.
Mm.
That's not my job. My job is to stay vehemently and fiercely committed to the seller, to protect their asset as a fiduciary responsibility, to see that they have as much money walking away as possible.
Hmm. I think that's a great way of looking at it. I think that that's an angle that more realtors and real estate agents should take, honestly.
Well, I heard someone say recently, and I thought this was a great perspective. Hey, don't negate, don't keep the public from what they like to do. What do you mean? Give them the opportunity to bid.
Right.
Give them the opportunity to bid on the house and to make it their own. Don't eliminate that. Allow the public to bid. And you'll see we've seen a lot of people that come up with these nonsense terms like transparent pricing.
Mm.
That's a broker made up word. What it tells me is that's somebody who doesn't have the strength and the experience to put the property on the market, to spend the time to make the investment, to design and to coordinate all of the various vendors to create a really compelling home. And instead they're surrendering. They're saying, okay, we'll accept this number.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know unless you go through the process? Now, our homes, it might take 30 days. It might take 14 days to get them ready to go on the market, between all the inspections, the remediation work, the design, the staging, the painting, the lighting, the landscape, the floors, the handles, the hinges, the hardware. But in the end, it's worth it. The seller benefits so tremendously. And that's what we have really put, that's where we focus. That's my passion.
That makes sense. And treating it like a product almost, I think, is a really cool way of thinking about it. And yeah, I mean, this is probably going to be the most valuable object that the seller ever sells in his life. So making sure that he can get the most for it makes complete sense. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jeff, you asked earlier, you asked what's the strangest home that you've ever worked for, the strangest home situation that you've ever encountered.
Yeah.
May I answer that one?
Absolutely. Yeah.
We had a home in Foster City that was a trust sale. He came to me through an attorney. The attorney said, look, I know you're going to take good care of my client. Her son will be involved. She's older. She doesn't live in the house anymore. So uncovering this and getting to know her a little bit, first the HOA was in arrears. She hadn't paid her HOA dues for this townhouse in, I think it was close to 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
The mortgage foreclosure was looming. I made a payment to reinstate her mortgage.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of problems in this house. We went in 7 days and resurfaced it. We advised a $49,000 800 budget, which was done in 7 business days.
Wow.
It came in on time. The home went on the market at 1.6 and it sold for 2.1 million. That was a contingent free, clean, over, asking. But unfortunately, the poor lady died the week after we sold the house for her.
Goodness.
Yeah, we run into a lot of that. And that's sort of was the impetus for me writing the book, Selling Grandma's House, in 2016. It's a case study book of 6 before and after stories of photography rich, where we were successful in helping the elderly, whether they had incapacitated in some way, or husband had passed, partner had passed. But there's a lot of joy in being able to bring our resources to help an elderly person improve their quality of life and their future standard of living, because generally, a lot of cases, the assets in the home.
Yeah. And I would guess these are the houses that would benefit the most from what you do. these homes that an elderly person has lived in for 40 years, let's say, that need a lot of updating, that if they didn't get that updating, someone would walk in and not be impressed. But with the updating, you can get a lot more for it.
And yeah, that's a great point. In many cases it is, but Jeff, they happen everywhere. It's not just the elderly. It's sometimes I get high-tech individuals. They've lived in the home for 2-3 years, and they really never really lived or settled into the home. They've been so busy, and the home just needs a lot of finesse. Not because they're elderly and it's out of date, because they're young, they're well-to-do, they're rising stars, and they just haven't gotten around to finishing a lot of things. And it's about bringing it all together and making it a cohesive experience for the buyer, and truly finishing the home so that it really stands out.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So you must have a great network of contractors that you use to work on these houses, right?
I do. I'm a previous licensed contractor, and my earlier career, I worked in the flooring business, but I really have to tip my hat to my father, who, ever since a very young age, owned lots of properties, and we were either involved with him doing flips or managing, multiple unit buildings since we were very, very young.
That makes sense. Is that how you got into becoming a real estate agent, that experience?
No, I rely upon a lot of those skills and a lot of the network that I cultivated over the years. It's funny how what you do and sometimes in your childhood comes back to you in your later years in life. And I guess it's more of that type of a situation. It's just always been in my blood to fix things and improve things.
Yeah, I definitely hear that. How did you build this network of contractors, and what advice do you have to anybody who needs to work with a bunch of contractors that maybe they don't have the same relationship that you do with them?
The secret really is it's not the number, it's the quality and their passion for what they do. For instance, I pretty much have the same team I've been using for many years, who do the design, stock the carpet that we know is going to work in just about any application, an $800,000 condo to a $5 million home in, you name it, Pacific Heights. They're very accustomed to this. They have their processes and their standard operating procedures really down to a science. We have color palettes that are that range from A to Z, that work together, and we know that we're not going to have difficulty. One of the things that people have to be very careful of today is some of the corporations, some of the big brokers have come out with these concierge services, and those are great. They throw a lot of money at interest-free, maybe fee-free, at sellers, but you're relying upon the agent to manage the project, to call out the materials. And, I've been called in a number of occasions to fix the mess that's been created, where another agent has been experimenting on somebody's home. So it's the long accumulated process of knowing what to do and to recognize where there's risk or where there's an issue. As an example, when we have older homes, older Victorians, we got to be really careful with the brittle wires, changing out lights, just simple light improvements, light fixtures, pendant lights, etc. You got to be really careful. Sometimes you get into some big issues just trying to change out lights because of the age of the wiring.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Tell me about staging the home. We've talked a lot about the refurbishing and the upgrades to handles, hardware, painting. I assume that staging the home is also critically important for getting people interested and excited.
Yes, absolutely. People want to, people want to don't want to look at an empty room. They want to see something that has some color and some pop and some textiles and some fashion.
Yeah.
I think the key to this, Jeff, is identifying who is the highest paying buyer demographic. So, in other words, who are we going to aim this home at? What's the highest paying potential buyer? Is it a nature lover? Is somebody who likes to walk their dogs? Somebody who likes to entertain because we've got terrific views? Is it a family with a growing number of children? And then stage and color and design to attract that audience. And I've always admired our stager because she says, we have to stage to people at least 10 years younger. So if you're staging a home to attract a 30-year-old, stage it for a 20-year-old because the 30-year-olds believe that they're still 20, et cetera, et cetera. So I can remember walking into a home that didn't sell, and the sellers asked me to come over and help them out. And I looked at this property, and it was staged. It looked like Liberace lived there.
Right.
Everything was glittery and stuffy and difficult to imagine living in the home. And while it was interesting, it was really something that people didn't want to touch. So I think that the general trend with staging is to stage to attract your demographic target market, who it is that's going to likely pay the most amount of money.
That is such a cool way of looking at it. I've never heard that before. And that makes total sense. I also love the idea of staging for people's, idealized younger selves, basically.
Well, the thing that comes to mind for me too is, a lot of the pants manufacturers don't put, if you're a 36 waist,
right?
Basically they cut them for 38 waist, so that you feel better.
Yeah.
It's just the way it goes today, It's you gotta love the marketing on that.
Yeah, that's such a good way of looking at that. That makes total sense. It also hits close to home as a 30-something-year-old who probably would be attracted to a 20-something-year-old's staging. That's very funny.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I guess let's put it all together. So final step, the walkthrough. How do you set that up and make sure that people are interested and excited for that final aspect?
Well, it's really important to communicate, Jeff. Nobody reads anymore. They look at pictures and they're going to make a decision just like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of case studies on our website, the before and after videos and the before and after slideshows, so that they also get with that a sense for what did it cost, how much time did it take, and what was the final result? What was the ROI? If I'm asking someone to invest $30,000 in 7 days that we're going to totally resurface the home, they want to know that they're going to get at least double, triple, maybe 3 times that money back. So I really believe in communicating in a way that people want to be communicated to. It's the receiver that dictates, not the sender's preference.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I really try to make it very clear is that we don't renovate. We don't renovate almost ever. We resurface. And when you resurface, you've eliminated the need to get permits. There's no inspections of the home, of the work that's been done, which means there's no intrusive inspectors that are going to visit the home. And it happens a lot faster. So we're not moving walls. And this really helps to disarm people, because we know that the structure is the structure. But if we're doing refinishing the floors, putting in new carpet, putting in new colors, we're changing out the ornamentation, the fixtures, the handrails, the handles, the pulls, the appliances, the countertops. These things don't require permits. So there's a lot less that can go wrong. We basically can drop ship all the items into the garage the week before
Mm-hmm.
and totally resurface a 2,000 square foot home in about 5 business days. That home is cleaned, staged, photographed, drone work. The 7th or 8th day, it's on the market, actively driving interest and working towards a bid date to aggregate that demand. So it's really about showing people the long history of having successfully resurfaced over 200 homes in the San Francisco Bay Area and asking them if they want to be a part of that.
Yeah, I'm convinced. I think this has been so interesting because I think that this is an angle that a lot of real estate agents don't focus on. But after hearing all this, clearly more should. It seems like a great way of approaching it and a great way of extracting basically all of the value for this seller for the home out that is possible. Well, this has been fascinating. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave us with?
You know, when I used to do mortgages for a brief time before I did loans, residential real estate, I noticed that there were 2 types of people. Some people just had never had a relationship with a professional that handled their finances,
Mm-hmm.
that checked their credit, that checked and verified their employment, and other people did. My best client is somebody who comes to me and says, I don't care what price you go to the market on. I don't care how much we have to spend. I just want the very highest sales price on the bid date and to know that that money is going to be deposited into my account on time without any hiccups and headaches. Right. And that's the kind of people that I like to work with, who are results oriented. You know, you'll find that we don't talk about how big we are because nobody cares. What we talk about is how much more money we're going to get people, because that's what they care about. So I think that the industry has changed a lot. The industry will continue to change, and it's going to be some exciting times coming up. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, me too. Perfect. Well, Craig, this was awesome. Very informative. Certainly opened my eyes about a lot of things. So thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time. And I'll talk to you later. Okay.
Thank you, Jeff. My pleasure.
Have a good one.